Guys, in this series, there are a lot of references to Sherlock and Moriarty's future. I would like to ask you if you bring this duality into your interpretation, because you play this character, a young version of this character, but we know their future.
I think it's quite
Titanic.
Yeah, it was quite. Yeah, it's we're so aware, it becomes something that we realise our characters shouldn't be aware of. So we kind of need to like try and forget that we know that they're not going to be friends. However, when you're planning out scenes, there's a lot of times where you can lean into that. So it is something that you need to be like conscious of at sometimes, kind of I guess before the scene, and then once you're in the scene, you need to kind of put it out of your mind because the characters don't know that. But I think it's really entertaining watching a friendship that you don't want it to crash and burn, but you know it inevitably will. And yeah, I think that's a good ride for audiences.
I think as well it lends this kind of energy of like they're constantly sparring in this like playful way. That means that like they want to challenge each other, but it all seems like safe in this bounds of like a really solid friendship. And that I think our job, and being led by Matthew as well, is to exactly kind of deny the fact that that's going to happen, because right now they're two outsiders who have like connected on a really like intellectual and personal level. So why would that not be anything other than a brilliant friendship? You know, that's what we want to play.
And do you think that this version of Sherlock is also a tribute to all these brilliant young people out there that don't have a chance? Because at the beginning of the series, we see Sherlock that isn't in a good place, even if he has a brilliant mind.
Yeah, I'd like to think so.
Yeah, it's a great spin on it.
I think Sherlock's such an exceptional character and quite unrelatable normally, and so is Moriarty. In Conan Doyle's works, they feel quite unrelatable, because if they were any more exceptional, you'd say that they're supernatural almost. But now we meet them at such an early stage in their life for so many reasons. It's a lot more relatable, and I think the characters both behave in a more relatable way, but we also see them at a stage in their life when naturally, you know, Sherlock's spending time with his mum and his brother, and they're both at school, and there's a friendship, and there's kind of like rites of passage and coming of age elements that I think are a lot more relatable than a lot of the stuff that we see in Conan Doyle's works, or the you know.
And that he's kind of somewhere to go as well, you know. I think if he was like just born with this brilliant mind and also an incredible fighter, and like I think if he had all that skill set as a teen, it would be unrelatable really to think that someone is
it would be unbelievable, unrelatable, and also kind of pointless telling this story of young Sherlock. I think what's important to us is creating these characters in a way where we believe they'll become the Sherlock and Moriarty that we know and love, or love to hate. But also, similar enough to believe that it's them, but not so similar that they've got nowhere to go, as Dónal was saying.
Without any spoilers, I would like to ask you, why was it important for you to start with such a personal story for Sherlock?
I always try and find something personal for me, whatever I do, because I think that's the way I work. That's the way I can explore something, you know, and what people take from this may have nothing to do with what I find in it. So there were three things that, for me, one was the story of losing a sibling, like losing a sister. That was very important. And the other thing, the effect that has on a family, and the effect that has on a young child. So that was important. Also exploring this idea of a dysfunctional family. And I think it was like once we meet his family, we start to understand much, much more about who he is. There's a beautiful moment in episode 4 when Sherlock, without giving any spoilers, but there's a moment with his mother and Moriarty, and he just gives a look to Moriarty. And in that moment, you can see all the suffering and all the difficulties he's had as a result of this family, which help to explain why he becomes this slightly strange man when he's older. And the third thing, on a personal level, was I loved this dynamic between Sherlock and Moriarty. I really wanted to explore the idea of Moriarty as a friend. I always found that idea really fascinating. And I always loved the movie, you know, the Butch Sundance movie in Guy, and you loved that as well. So when we talked early on, it was that sense of exploring that friendship. So it's those sort of three things: the sort of the loss of a sibling, the idea of a dysfunctional family, and the and the friendship. Those were the three things that were important, I think. That, you know.
Silas Holmes says that imagination can be dangerous.
Yes.
Do you agree?
It can be a wonderful thing. Ask my family what it's like to live with me. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, anything can be a curse. I think, you know, it depends how you use it, right? But I think that I don't know. I went for a walk just now before we did this. The sun's shining in London for the first time in a long time, and I went for a walk. Just this Lincoln Inn Fields. If you get a time, you should go just south of here. It's beautiful, and you know the daffodils are coming up and the birds are singing, and I just sat on the bench and sort of got lost in my imagination about ideas for future seasons and stuff. It's a wonderful place to be in your imagination, as long as you come back to reality enough to live in the world.